After I slapped my husband Ethan Vance's mistress, Chloe, he had my entire family sent to a private psychiatric sanitarium. Since then, I never dared to cross him again. When Chloe had cramps, I warmed her milk. When Chloe went into labor, I stayed up all night to serve her. Only after her baby with Ethan was born did I finally dare to beg him, with bated breath, to release my family. But Ethan only let out a mocking laugh, tossing a casual sentence my way. Aria, do you know how I met Chloe in the first place? Your dear brother and father personally put her in my bed. Aria, she's your half-sister. He looked at my increasingly pale face with a sneer, unlocked his phone, and pushed it in front of me. Your father and Julian were never locked away in that sanitarium. For the past 3 years, they've been right by Chloe's side. On the screen, my father and Julian were doting on Chloe and her baby, their faces filled with a pure joy I had never once seen directed at me. In an instant, my eyes welled with tears. My heart felt as if it were being slowly ripped apart, inch by inch. Ethan continued in his self-satisfied tone. Aria, you've been very obedient these past 3 years. Keep it up. Tell me what kind of compensation you want, and I'll give it to you. Though, he smiled mysteriously, even if I offer it, you probably won't want it, will you? I wiped my tears, lifted my chin, and forced a smile. Ethan, I'm afraid you won't be able to afford the compensation I want. Ethan scoffed. Name it. I'll do my best to satisfy you. I looked him straight in the eye. Since you want to compensate me, give me cash. I want $100 million, not a single penny less. Ethan's eyes turned cold. He suddenly sneered and spoke to the phone on the desk. Chloe, looks like neither of us guessed right. I hadn't noticed when the screen had switched to a FaceTime call. Chloe was smiling, looking at me with pure mockery. Aria, we had a bet on what you would ask Ethan for once you found out the truth. I bet you would reject any compensation and go crazy, throwing a tantrum in his office. Ethan bet you would use this to blackmail him into never divorcing you. As for Dad and Julian, one guessed you would demand Ethan send me away, and the other guessed you would self-harm to force him to compromise. She turned the camera to the side. My father was holding Chloe's baby with a beaming smile, but the moment he saw me on screen, his warmth vanished. Aria, I really didn't expect you to open your mouth and demand money from Ethan. Has our family ever let you go hungry or cold all these years? How did you become so materialistic? What makes you any different from those greedy gold diggers out there? Julian patted Chloe's head, his eyes full of affection and helplessness, but when he looked back at the camera, his expression iced over. Aria, I know you're angry. If you're short on cash, I can wire you some, but you shouldn't have demanded it from Ethan. Chloe and Ethan love each other. They don't owe you anything. Is that so? With bloodshot eyes, I cut him off. Stealing my husband, stealing my father and my brother, destroying my marriage and my home. Playing me like a fool for 3 years, tricking me into being her maid for 3 years. And you say they don't owe me anything? Julian frowned. Aria, watch your mouth. We didn't mean to lie to you. You've just been stubborn since you were a kid. If we hadn't done this, how could you have ever accepted Chloe? Chloe has been depressed since giving birth. We were worried about her postpartum depression, so we came up with this bet just to cheer her up. Don't take it to heart. The corners of my lips twisted into a dry laugh. In that case, just give me the money. Dad, give me 50 million. Julian, give me 30 million. I can keep acting for you guys and play maid for Chloe. How does that sound? Julian's face turned livid. Aria Montgomery, when are you going to stop throwing this tantrum? I sneered. It's just a little bit of pocket money. Don't tell me the wealthy Vance and Montgomery families of New York can't even afford this much. Enough. Since you love money so much, you can have it. Ethan glanced at me, pulling a document from his drawer. Chloe has already given birth. My child cannot be a bastard. Sign these divorce papers, and $100 million will be wired to your account immediately. Looking at those few thin sheets of paper, I didn't hesitate for a second. I grabbed the pen and signed my name. The look Ethan gave me suddenly became complicated. Do you really care about money that much? You weren't like this before. Suppressing the knife-like pain in my chest, I squeezed out an indifferent smile. If I don't take the money, what else can you give me? He stared at me, his dark eyes deep and unreadable. Maybe you could beg me not to divorce you. Aria, if you just beg me, I'll tear this agreement up right now. Beg him? I bit my lips so hard it almost bled, remembering the first few months after I discovered his affair with Chloe. I had begged him countless times. I had even slit my wrists just to force him to come home. But my blood pooling on the floor only earned me a cold sentence from him. Don't do this next time. Chloe can't stand the sight of blood. And then what? I looked at him calmly, my voice dripping with irony. And then you'll tell me this is just another one of your bets, designed to make me a laughingstock? I let out a bitter laugh, my throat tight. Ethan, stop testing me. Haven't you played me enough these past 3 years? Something cold rolled down my cheek. The tears I had held back for so long finally spilled over. Ethan instinctively reached out to wipe them away. For a brief second, a flicker of guilt crossed his eyes.
He sighed.
Chloe had my baby after all. She's still young and a bit spoiled. Just let her have her way this once. Don't worry. I'll keep the position of Mrs. Vance open for you. Marrying Chloe is just to get the baby registered under my name. He paused, then added as if to reassure himself. I'll give you the 100 million. Take the money and travel for a while. Once I handle everything, we'll remarry. You should be satisfied with that, right? I tilted my face up, smiled, and gave a soft hum. Then book me a ticket to Switzerland. We promised we would go see the Alpine lakes together. He let out a sigh of relief and pulled me into a tight embrace. Okay. Go by yourself first. Once things are settled here, I'll join you. Aria, wait for me. Leaning against his shoulder, I didn't say another word. But in my heart, I knew I would never wait for him again. Seeing that I had complied, Ethan finally spoke up. Give me the keys to the villa. You need to move out for a while. Chloe is moving in. You know she's been in a bad mood since the delivery. Pack your things thoroughly. Don't leave anything behind that might ruin her mood. Besides, we've lived in that villa for years. It's getting old anyway. Don't hold a grudge against her. He cleared his throat, taking out a set of keys and a property deed from his drawer. I've bought you a new villa in the south of the city. Move your things there first. I remained silent, but my mind drifted back to when we first bought our old villa. We had designed the layout together, chose the color of the curtains, and picked the paintings for the foyer. We even agreed to reserve 2 nursery rooms, one in pink, one in blue. He said it was our love nest. He had personally carved a wooden sign to hang at the entrance, naming it Aria's Haven. But later, he stayed up all night with Chloe in his office while I lost my baby all alone in that empty villa. I smiled, taking the keys and placing them in his hand. It's fine. New is good. From now on, everything I owned would be new, not just the house. After leaving the Vance Group headquarters, I drove to the private sanitarium alone. Over the past 3 years, I had pushed open the ward doors countless times, crying hysterically as I watched my father and Julian pretend to be patients. But none of them knew that I had met someone else here. I pushed open the door to a quiet room. Sunlight spilled across the windowsill, where a young man sat, gazing into the distance. His features were sharp, radiating a cold, rebellious aura. His messy hair fell over his forehead, gilded by the sunlight. If any reporter were here, they would recognize him instantly. The youngest son of the French shipping tycoon, who had been secretly sent to this sanitarium years ago. I spoke softly. I have the money now. I'm taking you out of here. Ethan had no idea that my real destination wasn't Switzerland. It was France. When I went back to the villa to pack my bags, the maid looked at me with a strange, hesitant expression. I frowned, walked into the living room, and instantly understood why. My belongings were strewn all over the floor in a messy pile. And Chloe was walking down the stairs, wearing a snow-white wedding dress. I bit my lip, staring at her. She lifted the hem of the dress and smirked. Aria, this is the main gown Ethan personally designed for you back then, right? Well, Ethan already promised to give it to me. He said that since you're out of shape now anyway, you can't fit into it. It's the dress's good fortune that I like it. She spun around, letting the skirt flare out. Aria, do you think I look good in your dress? Does it fit? The pristine white gown looked magical under the crystal chandelier. Chloe looked radiant, her face flushed with happiness and arrogance. Years ago, Ethan had stayed up for several nights just to draw the blueprints for this dress. The first time I tried it on, he told me, Aria, this is a one-of-a-kind gown for the one-of-a-kind girl in my life. The words were still echoing in my ears, but the man had already changed. Chloe didn't realize that since I didn't even want Ethan anymore, why would I care about a meaningless piece of fabric? I gave a calm smile, slowly releasing my clenched fists. Chloe, did no one ever teach you that you have to pay for taking other people's things? This gown is worth $30 million. I expect that amount wired to my account as soon as possible. Chloe's face instantly twisted in anger. You bitch. You've monopolized Ethan and stolen my family for so many years. How dare you demand money? With that, she raised her hand and lunged forward to slap me. But the gown's train was far too heavy. I simply stepped aside, and Chloe tripped over the lace, crashing heavily onto the floor. My father and Julian came rushing down the stairs. Chloe, what happened? Julian glared at me with pure rage. Aria, did you push Chloe again? Before I could speak, a heavy slap landed squarely on my face. A burning pain erupted across my cheek. I looked at my father in absolute disbelief. His face was flushed with anger as he barked. I knew you were bitter and never truly accepted Chloe. But she just gave birth and she's still weak. How could you lay a hand on her? Chloe sobbed, playing the victim. Dad, don't be mad at Aria. It's not her fault. Aria said this dress costs 30 million and I have no right to wear it if I don't pay her. But I don't have that kind of money. She didn't mean to push me. She looked up with tearful, pitiful eyes. It's my fault for not having the money to give her. Dad, Julian, if we give her the money, will she stop being mad at me? My father let out a harsh scoff, completely enraged. Chloe, you are too kind. Give money to this ungrateful wretch? In her dreams. I should have known she'd turn out just like her mother, a greedy, money-grubbing bitch. A sharp pang hit my chest. I clutched my cheek, staring at him. His face was contorted with hatred, spitting insults. The mask of fatherly love he had worn for years was cracking completely. Julian quickly stepped in to hold him back. Dad, don't. A tiny spark of hope flared in my chest. But in the next second, Julian spoke coldly. If we push her too hard, she might show up and ruin Chloe's wedding. Since she loves money so much, just give it to her. Consider it charity for a beggar. He pulled out a black card and threw it at my face with utter disgust. There's over 30 million in there. Is that enough? Take it and get out. Don't ever show your face in front of Chloe again. I stared down at the black card belonging to the Montgomery family. The last thread of connection in my heart snapped. I bent down slowly, picked up the card, and let out a careless laugh. Looking at my scattered, messy luggage, I didn't even feel like packing anymore. Since you can afford the price, I'm selling all of this to you. I stared at him mockingly. Since you've already accepted your new sister and your new family, I won't stay to eyesore you. From this day forward, I have nothing to do with the Montgomery family. I grabbed my legal documents from my bag and turned to leave. Wait, Chloe called out, her face cold. Since you said you're selling everything for 30 million, shouldn't you leave one more thing behind? I frowned, not understanding. She sneered. You're divorcing Ethan. You shouldn't be wearing that wedding ring anymore, right? I looked down at the gold band on my ring finger, suddenly realizing what she meant. This gold ring was the first gift Ethan gave me when we started dating. He had hand-forged the matching couple rings himself, engraving our names inside. He once told me that gold was the most stable element in the world, just like our love. But we both forgot that gold is also the softest metal. A little bit of external force, and it becomes completely deformed. After 10 years of entanglement, the ring had practically grown into my skin. It wouldn't budge. I tugged at it twice but couldn't get it off. Frustrated, I grabbed a pair of heavy scissors from the desk and aimed them straight at the metal band. The moment the blade snapped the ring, a sharp shout came from the doorway. Aria, what are you doing? The scissors were violently wrenched from my hand, and Ethan pulled me into a desperate embrace. You're trying to hurt yourself again, aren't you? His voice died in his throat as his eyes fell on the severed ring. He looked completely devastated. You actually cut the ring? Why? Ethan, I wanted that ring. Only then did Ethan notice Chloe standing nearby. Chloe's expression was incredibly tense, her fingers tightly gripping her skirt. Aria already sold all her belongings to me for 30 million. Ethan, you made that ring with your own hands. I want to keep it. You don't mind, do you? Ethan quickly let go of me, turning to Chloe with a doting smile. Chloe, that design is outdated. If you like gold, I'll forge a brand new set for us. Tears welled in Chloe's eyes. But I want you to melt this one down and use it to make my new one. You promised me that once our baby was born, you'd give me whatever I wanted. Ethan fell silent for a long moment before nodding helplessly. Okay. I let out a mocking laugh, pulled the broken ring off my finger, threw it onto the floor, and turned to walk away. But Chloe called out to me yet again. Aria, you just said you want nothing to do with the Montgomery family. In that case, there's one more thing you need to surrender. She looked at the men with red, watery eyes. Dad, Julian, Ethan, I am a daughter of the Montgomery family. I want to legally change my name and return to the family registry. My father nodded eagerly. Of course. It's a joyous occasion. I'll hire the best consultant to find you a beautiful new name. But Chloe cut him off. Dad, I've already decided on my future name. A malicious smile spread across her lips. I want to be called Aria Montgomery. So, Aria, I'm going to need you to legally change your name. Ethan, this is my very last request. You'll make sure it happens, won't you? Aria was the name my late mother gave me. It was her final blessing of love. Ethan knew that, but after a brief struggle, he still opened his mouth. Aria, just change your name. I'll compensate you with more money. I smirked, nodding without hesitation. Sure. As long as the price is right. Ethan let out a sigh of relief. I'll have my assistant wire you another $50 million immediately. Very soon, Ethan's legal team escorted me to the government office to process the name change. Holding my brand new ID, I looked up at the sky and smiled. My name, my identity, my marriage. I had shed everything from my past. From now on, I was truly free. When I arrived at the airport, Ethan called me. Aria, now that you've changed your name, go to the villa in the south of the city. I've already had people move your stuff there. Chloe is just throwing a childish tantrum. I'll make her change it back in a few months. Don't take it personally. I gave a faint hum and hung up. A message from a real estate agent popped up on my Snapchat. Aria, the villa has been sold according to your terms. The buyer was thrilled with the low price and paid in full. Check your account to confirm the wire. I replied to confirm, verified the transfer, popped my SIM card out, and tossed it into the airport trash can. Then, I turned to the young man standing beside me with a smile. Let's go. Our gate is boarding. The private jet sliced through the clouds, leaving the skyline of New York behind. Beside me sat the young man from the sanitarium. He had discarded his hospital scrubs for a tailored charcoal suit, his sharp features relaxed under the cabin. Lights. His name was Lucian Moretti, the youngest heir to the Moretti shipping dynasty, Europe's undisputed titan of maritime trade. 2 years ago, his half-brothers had bribed local officials and a corrupt medical team to keep him sedated in that private sanitarium in New York, attempting to steal his inheritance. They hadn't counted on me. During the 3 years I spent in that hellish place visiting my sick father and brother, I had noticed Lucian. I saw through the fake medical records, used my own money to bribe a sympathetic nurse, and helped Lucian secretly communicate with his loyalists in Paris. When Ethan handed me that $100 million, it wasn't just cash to me, it was the final key to breaking Lucian out, securing his family's throne, and funding my own rebirth. You look remarkably calm for a woman who just cut off her entire past, Lucian said, pouring 2 glasses of vintage champagne and handing one to me. I looked down at my bare ring finger. The skin was still raw where the gold band had rubbed against it for a decade, but the suffocating weight was gone. I didn't cut off my past, Lucian, I replied, taking a sip. I bought my freedom. Every tear I shed over Ethan Vance, every bit of dignity I surrendered. To Chloe and my family, they paid for it in cash. And now the transaction is complete. Lucian smiled, a dangerous, breathtaking curve of his lips. Welcome to the real world, Aria. Or should I call you by your mother's birth name now? Evelyn, I said softly, staring into the dark sky beyond the oval window. Evelyn Vance and Aria Montgomery died today in New York. Call me Evelyn. Sterling. Meanwhile, in New York, Ethan Vance was standing in the middle of his office, staring at his desk. The divorce papers were signed. The name change documents were processed. He had gotten everything Chloe asked for. He had protected Chloe's pride, given her the wedding dress, and wiped the name Aria off the family tree. Yet, a strange, hollow ache gnawed at his chest. He pulled out his phone and dialed the local real estate agent he had assigned to manage the southern villa he bought for Aria. Is she settled in? Ethan asked, his tone cool, expecting to hear that Aria was crying or sulking in her new home. Mr. Vance. The agent sounded utterly baffled. Settled in? Sir, the villa was listed on the market 3 hours ago and sold at a 30% discount for cash. The full payment was wired directly to Miss Sterling's offshore account. Ethan froze, the phone slipping slightly in his hand. What did you say? She sold the villa, sir. She didn't even set foot inside. She instructed us to sell it immediately upon transfer of title. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. He hung up and frantically dialed Aria's number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He called her Snapchat. Account deleted. He called the airline to check her ticket to Switzerland. Mr. Vance, passenger Aria Montgomery never boarded the flight to Zurich. Her ticket was cancelled 3 hours ago. Ethan felt as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over his head. The air left his lungs in a sharp gasp. She wasn't going to Switzerland. She wasn't waiting for him. She hadn't taken the money because she was greedy or obedient. She had taken every cent to strip him of any right to ever contact her again. If I don't take the money, what else can you give me? Her cold, indifferent voice echoed in his mind.
No, no, no.
Ethan muttered, grabbing his coat and sprinting out of the office. He drove like a madman back to the old villa, our love nest. When he slammed the front door open, Chloe was sitting on the sofa, eating grapes while my father and brother pampered her. My handmade wooden sign, Aria's Haven, lay in the trash can by the entryway, chopped into pieces. Ethan, Chloe squeaked, running over with a sweet smile.
Look.
Dad and Julian are helping me design the new nursery. Ethan ignored her, rushing past her into my former dressing room. It was completely empty. Not a single shoe, not a single piece of jewelry, not even a strand of my hair was left. She hadn't packed her things, she had literally thrown them into the trash or sold them to Chloe for cash, leaving nothing behind. Ethan stumbled backward, his back hitting the cold frame of the door. On the vanity table lay a single piece of paper. He lunged for it. It was a handwritten note from me, brief and merciless. Ethan, thank you for the $180 million. You paid for my marriage, my name, and 10 years of my youth. We are even. Never look for me, because if you do, you will only find your executioner. Ethan stared at the words, his hands shaking, violent tears spilling from his
eyes.
Ethan, what's wrong? Chloe walked in, looking at the note with disgust.
Is
that bitch throwing another tantrum? Ignore her. She's probably hiding in some cheap hotel waiting for you to beg her back. Shut up, Ethan roared, rounding on Chloe with bloodshot eyes. Chloe gasped, taking a step back in terror. My father and Julian rushed in, their faces darkening. Ethan, how dare you shout at Chloe? My father yelled. She's weak from giving birth. She sold the house. Ethan screamed, his voice cracking with hysterical rage. She sold her name. She cut her ring.
She's gone.
She deleted everything. He grabbed Julian by the collar, his eyes wild. You said she was throwing a tantrum. You said she loved money. She took the money and erased herself from my life. Are you happy now? Julian paled, standing frozen as Ethan collapsed onto his knees amidst the empty room, weeping uncontrollably into his hands. For the first time in 3 years, a chilling thought crept into the minds of Ethan, my father, and my brother. What if Aria was never playing a game? What if she truly didn't want them anymore? 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. In New York, the glorious illusion the Montgomery and Vance families had built began to crumble from the inside out. Without me in the background managing Ethan's schedule, keeping his chronic stomach ulcers in check, and quietly fixing his supply chain logistics, his business began to falter. Ethan grew increasingly irritable, drinking heavily every night and obsessively searching every country in Europe for any trace of Aria Montgomery, but she had vanished like smoke. Meanwhile, Chloe's true nature was fully exposed. Without me around to act as her punching bag and maid, Chloe turned her arrogance toward Ethan, Julian, and my father. She spent millions of dollars a month on haute couture, threw violent temper tantrums at housemaids, and neglected her newborn baby, leaving the child entirely to nannies. Julian, who used to view Chloe as an angelic half-sister, was forced to manage her mess every single day. Worst of all, without my quiet work overseeing the Montgomery family's legacy assets my late mother had built, the Montgomery Group suffered massive operational losses. Julian, where is the quarterly report for the European shipping route? My father shouted in the boardroom, looking older and frilier than ever.
The
French port authorities just revoked our docking permits. We are losing $20 million a day. Julian wiped cold sweat from his forehead. Dad, those permits were originally negotiated through mother's family contacts in Paris. Aria was the one who personally renewed them every 3 years. My father stunned into silence.
Aria?
She did that. Yes, Julian said, his voice trembling with a late, bitter realization.
Aria
spoke fluent French. She was managing all foreign relations for our company. Behind the scenes, we thought she was just staying home doing nothing. At that moment, Ethan burst into the boardroom, his face grim. Stop looking at the local reports, Ethan said coldly, tossing a glossy luxury magazine onto the table. Look at this. On the cover of Forbes Global, a striking woman stood alongside Lucian Moretti, the newly crowned king of European logistics. The woman was wearing an emerald-cut diamond necklace worth $50 million. Her hair was styled in sleek, dark waves, her chin lifted high, her eyes cold, breathtaking, and regal. She looked radiant, powerful, unreachable. The headline read, "The Reborn Queen of Global Trade, Evelyn Sterling and Lucian Moretti acquire largest shipping conglomerate in the West." My father squinted at the cover, his jaw dropping. This is Aria, Julian whispered, his voice shaking violently. It's Aria? Ethan stared at the cover, his fingers clutching the paper so hard it tore. For 2 long years, he had imagined her suffering in obscurity, regretting her decision, begging to return to his side. He had kept her empty villa intact, refusing to register his marriage with Chloe, holding onto the delusional hope that she would come back. But she hadn't just survived. She had conquered Europe. She had built an empire that made the Vance and Montgomery families look like mere dust beneath her
Feet.
She changed her name to Evelyn Sterling. Ethan murmured, a mixture of awe, agonizing regret, and obsessive longing twisting his heart. She took her mother's maiden name. Ethan. Chloe's shrill voice echoed as she pushed past the secretaries into the boardroom.
What are you looking at?
The baby is sick, and you haven't been home in 3 days. You need to give me more money for. Chloe stopped mid-sentence as her eyes fell on the magazine cover on the desk. Her face drained of all color. No, impossible. Chloe shrieked, snatching the magazine and tearing it in half. This is fake. She's just a gold digger. How could she be standing next to Lucian Moretti? Ethan slowly stood up, looking at Chloe with utter revulsion. For 2 years, he had tolerated her tantrums because of the child and his own stubborn pride. But looking at her now, screeching like a lunatic while the woman he betrayed was ruling the world, he felt an overwhelming wave of disgust. Get out, Ethan said quietly.
What?
Chloe gasped. I said, get out. Ethan slammed his fist onto the mahogany table, roaring like a wounded beast. You ruined my life. You made me throw away the best thing that ever happened to me. Ethan, my father intervened, stepping in front of Chloe. How can you speak to
Chloe like that?
She is your wife. She is not my wife. Ethan sneered, pulling a legal document from his folder and throwing it in my father's face. I never filed our marriage certificate. She is nothing to me. Chloe collapsed onto the floor, screaming and sobbing, but Ethan didn't give her a second glance. He straightened his tie, his eyes burning with a crazy, desperate light. Prepare the private jet, Ethan commanded his secretary. We are flying to
Paris.
Immediately. The Grand Palais in Paris was ablaze with lights. The annual Global Maritime Summit brought together the world's most powerful,
Elite.
wealthy magnates, European royalty, and global titans gathered under the magnificent glass dome. Ethan, Julian, and my father walked into the grand ballroom, feeling severely out of place despite their tailored tuxedos. The Montgomery and Vance groups were on the verge of bankruptcy due to revoked European trade rights. This summit was their last desperate attempt to secure a lifeline contract with Moretti Group. Remember, Ethan whispered coldly to Julian and his father. We are here to see Mr. Moretti. Do not cause a scene. Suddenly, the chatter in the room died down. The heavy oak doors at the top of the grand marble staircase swung open. Lucian Moretti walked in, wearing an impeccable navy suit. Arm in arm with him was a woman who commanded the entire room's breath. I wore a high-neck, backless gown made of midnight blue silk, encrusted with sapphire dust that sparkled like a galaxy under the chandeliers. My dark hair was swept up, revealing the delicate line of my neck and ears adorned with priceless teardrop diamonds. I moved with absolute grace and power, a subtle, confident smile playing on my
Lips.
Ethan stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, his wine glass slipping from his fingers and shattering onto the marble floor.
Aria.
He choked out, his voice barely a whisper. My father and Julian stared in absolute shock. The daughter and sister they had treated as a maid, the woman they had labeled bitter, greedy, and materialistic, was being greeted by French dukes and global CEOs with deep respect. Lucian leaned down, whispering something in my ear. I chuckled softly, a bright, melodic sound that cut through Ethan's heart like a rusted knife. Unable to contain himself, Ethan pushed through the crowd of billionaires and lunged toward the stairs. Aria, he cried out, his voice desperate and raw. The crowd gasped. Security guards immediately stepped forward, but I held up a single slender hand, stopping them. I slowly descended the stairs, my heels clicking rhythmically against the stone. Lucian stayed a half step behind me, a protective, mocking gleam in his dark
eyes.
Ethan took a step toward me, reaching out a trembling hand. Aria, it's you. It really is you. I found you. I stopped 3 feet away from him, looking at him as if he were a speck of dirt on a pristine floor. I apologize, sir, I said, my voice smooth, elegant, and entirely void of
Emotion.
You have the wrong person. My name is Evelyn Sterling, co-chairman of Moretti Logistics. Ethan's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Aria, stop pretending. I know. It's you. Look at me. Tears streamed down his cheeks. I was wrong. I was
blind.
These past 2 years have been hell without you. Please, come home with
me.
My father and Julian rushed over, their faces pale and full of mixed emotions. My father stammered, his voice trembling. Aria, my daughter, you're alive. You're doing so well. Julian stepped forward, his eyes red. Aria, Dad, and I missed you so much.
We
were tricked by Chloe. She lied to us about everything. Please listen to Ethan. He never even registered his marriage with her. He's been looking for you every day. I looked at the 3 men standing before me. They looked exhausted, desperate, and pathetic. 2 years ago, their words were sharp arrows designed to bleed me dry. Now they were begging like dogs at my
feet.
I let out a soft, amused laugh. Miss me? I looked at my father. Dad, when Chloe tripped over her own gown, you slapped me and called me a greedy bitch like my mother. My father's face turned deathly white. Julian. I turned my eyes to my brother. You threw a card at my face and told me it was charity for a beggar. Julian shuddered, taking a step back as if struck by lightning. And Ethan. I looked into the eyes of the man I had loved for 10 long years. You watched them insult me. You made me give up my gown, my ring, and my very name just to appease your mistress's childish whim. I was stupid. Ethan dropped to his knees right there in front of the entire global elite, uncaring of his dignity. He reached out, trying to grab the hem of my dress, but Lucian stepped in front of him, blocking his hand with the tip of his polished shoe. Aria, please. Ethan sobbed, bowing his head to the floor. I'll give you everything. My company, my life, my heart. Just come back to me. I'll tear up. Everything. I'll ruin Chloe. Just give me one more chance. I tilted my head, looking down at him with genuine pity, the kind of pity one feels for a crushed bug. Ethan, do you remember what I told you the day I signed the divorce papers? Ethan looked up, his face drenched in tears, shaking his head frantically. I told you, I smiled softly, that you wouldn't be able to afford the compensation I want. I turned my back on him, raising my champagne glass toward the high society of Europe. Now, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have a continent to run. Ethan didn't give up. He, Julian, and my father stayed in Paris, calling my office hundreds of times a day, standing outside the Moretti Group headquarters in the freezing rain, begging for a 5-minute meeting. They were desperate. The Vance and Montgomery groups were facing total liquidation. They needed a $200 million injection and access to Moretti's shipping lanes to survive. On the 5th day, I finally granted them an audience in my top-floor corner office. When the 3 men entered, they looked disheveled and broken. Ethan's eyes were sunken, his tailored suit wrinkled. Evelyn, Miss Sterling, Julian said carefully, no longer daring to call me
Aria.
Thank you for seeing us. I sat behind my massive mahogany desk, sipping black tea. Lucian stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, playing with a silver lighter. You have 3 minutes, I said coldly. Ethan stepped forward, placing a thick stack of documents on my desk. Aria, Evelyn. Ethan corrected himself quickly. This is the transfer deed for all of Vance Group's shares and properties. I've signed them all over to you.
I
don't want the money. I don't want the company. I just want to give it to you as compensation. My father stepped up too, his hands trembling. And the Montgomery family assets. I've stripped Chloe of her inheritance. I've rewritten my will to leave everything to you, Aria. Julian agrees. Julian nodded fervently.
Yes.
Aria, we don't want anything. We just want our family back. I looked at the documents, then raised an eyebrow at Lucian. Lucian let out a low chuckle. How touching, I said smoothly. A sacrifice of everything you own.
But did
you really think I didn't know the state of your companies? I pulled out a thin file and tossed it across the desk. Vance Group has $300 million in hidden debt due to failed investments in Southeast Asia. Montgomery Group is facing 3 federal fraud lawsuits for Unsafe shipping containers. Ethan and my father froze. You aren't giving me assets. I sneered, leaning forward, my eyes sharp as
daggers.
you are trying to transfer your crushing debt to me under the guise of an apology.
No.
That's not true. Ethan panicked. I didn't know. You knew. I cut him off smoothly. Because I was the one who engineered your bankruptcy. The room went dead silent. What? What did you say? Julian breathed out, his voice trembling. Lucian stepped away from the window, tossing a tablet onto the desk. Over the past 2 years, Miss Sterling acquired 80% of your creditors' bonds.
She
Personally bought out your European port authorities and redirected your major clients to Moretti Logistics. I looked at my father's horrified expression with absolute satisfaction. Did you really think I left New York just to hide and cry? I scoffed. I spent every single cent of the $180 million you gave me to build a cage around your lives. Yesterday morning, I authorized the foreclosures. By noon tomorrow, the Vance Group and the Montgomery Group will officially declare bankruptcy. Aria, my father shrieked, clutching his chest. I am your father. How could you be so cruel? You're destroying your own family. My family? I stood up, slamming my hands on the desk, my voice ringing like a iron bell. My family died the day my mother passed away.
My family died when
You locked me out and let Chloe steal my life. You treated me like dirt for 3 years while I served your bastard daughter. Ethan fell to his knees again, tears streaming down his face. Please don't do this. It's already done, Ethan, I said coldly. Oh, and by the way, I have one last gift for you before you return to New York to face the bank asset seizures. I pressed a button on my intercom. Send her in. The office door swung open. A woman walked in, escorted by 2 security guards. She was dressed in disheveled clothes, her makeup smeared, her eyes wild with terror. It was Chloe. Ethan.
Dad.
Julian. Chloe screamed, trying to run toward them, but the guards
Held her firmly.
Help me. These people kidnapped me from the hotel. My father stared at her in confusion. Chloe, how did you get to Paris? I walked out from behind my desk, standing before Chloe. She didn't come to Paris for you, I said calmly. She came to meet her real business partner. Lucian tossed a manila envelope onto the coffee table. Photos spilled out. They showed Chloe's secretly meeting with Ethan's rival corporate spy in New York, passing over Vance Group's confidential trade secrets in exchange for offshore bank accounts. Ethan stared at the photos, his blood running cold. Chloe, you leaked our product designs. That's not all, Lucian added with a dark smile. Mr. Montgomery, you might want to look at the DNA test results in that folder as well. My father's hands shook uncontrollably as he picked up the medical report from the folder. He read the bold text at the bottom. Probability of paternity, 0%. My father gasped, his face turning an unhealthy shade of purple. No. This is impossible. She is my daughter, her mother said. Her mother lied, I said coldly. Chloe's biological father is a low-level gambler who died in prison 10 years ago. Her mother used you to fund her lavish lifestyle, and when she died, Chloe passed herself off as your daughter to inherit the Montgomery fortune. You fake bitch. Julian roared, leaping forward and grabbing Chloe by her hair. We gave up Aria for you. We ruined our lives for you. Chloe screamed, crying hysterically. Julian let go. Dad, help me.
It's
not true. Aria forged those papers. She hates me. And what about the child, Chloe? Ethan's voice was dead, emotionless and cold as ice. He stepped up to her, staring into her frantic eyes. Whose child is
it?
Chloe panicked, her lips trembling. Ethan, the baby is yours. I swear it's yours. Lucian pulled out a second DNA test and tossed it right onto Ethan's face. The baby belongs to Ethan's former vice president, the guy Chloe was sleeping with while Ethan was staying up all night pretending to care about her. Postpartum depression, Lucian said smoothly.
Bang.
Ethan felt his world completely collapse. The child he had protected, the woman he had ruined his marriage for, the family he had chosen over the wife who loved him for 10 years was all a grotesque, humiliating lie. Aha. Ethan let out a blood-curdling scream of pure agony and humiliation, collapsing onto the floor, pulling at his hair like a madman. My father clutched his chest, gasping for air as he slumped into a chair. My life, my company, my family, all gone. Julian stood frozen, tears streaming down his face as he looked at me with profound, crushing guilt.
I.
Julian sobbed, falling to his knees beside Ethan. What have we done? What have we done to you? I looked at the four people kneeling and weeping on the floor of my office. There was no joy in my heart, no wild satisfaction, only a deep, profound sense of final peace. The debt had been paid. The ghosts of my past were finally put
To rest.
security, I said softly, turning my back on them. Throw them out. The aftermath was swift and merciless. The next day, news of the Vance Group and Montgomery Group's double bankruptcy hit global headlines. Their assets were seized by the courts. The luxurious villa where Ethan and I once lived was auctioned off and bought by a local charity to be turned into an animal shelter. My father suffered a severe stroke from the shock of the truth. He survived, but was left paralyzed on his right side, unable to speak clearly, confined to a state-run nursing home in New York, a far cry from the luxurious private sanitarium he had once faked being in. Julian, stripped of his wealth and reputation, couldn't find a job anywhere in the corporate world due to his association with the ruined Montgomery Group.
He
Ended up working as a low-level warehouse clerk, spending his tiny salary paying off his father's medical bills, living in a cramped, dark basement apartment, forever haunted by the memory of the sister he threw away. Chloe was arrested for corporate espionage and fraud. With no money to hire a lawyer and no family left to rescue her, she was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Her child was placed into the foster care system after its biological father fled the country to escape prosecution. As for Ethan Vance, he sold his remaining personal watches and cars to pay off his immediate legal
fees.
He didn't flee, nor did he try to restart his life. He moved into a tiny, dilapidated studio apartment in downtown Manhattan.
The
only item he kept from his past life was a small glass jar placed on his bedside table. Inside the jar were the shattered, severed pieces of the gold wedding ring I had cut with heavy scissors 2 years ago. Every night, Ethan sat alone in the dark, drinking cheap whiskey, staring at the golden scraps, weeping until his throat was dry, whispering a name that no longer belonged to anyone in his world. Aria, I'm sorry.
Aria.
6 months later, the French Riviera. The Mediterranean Sea stretched out to the horizon, a brilliant sheet of shimmering turquoise under the golden afternoon sun. I stood on the deck of a sleek private yacht, wearing a flowing white silk dress, the sea breeze playing with my hair. Lucian walked over, holding 2 glasses of chilled white wine. He leaned against the railing beside me, gazing out at the open water. A letter came from New York today, Lucian said softly, handing me a glass. From Julian. I didn't take the letter. I simply took a sip of my wine and looked out at the ocean. Did you open it?
No, Lucian smiled gently.
It's your decision. I took the envelope from his hand, didn't even look at the return address, and tossed it into the wind. The white paper fluttered like a broken bird before dipping into the deep blue ocean, vanishing beneath the waves forever. I don't need to read it, I said, my voice calm, light, and entirely free.
The
past belongs to the sea. Lucian looked at me, his dark eyes filled with warmth, admiration, and a quiet, profound devotion. He reached out, his fingers gently closing around mine, not to possess me, but to walk beside me. Where to next, Evelyn? He asked softly. I looked up at the endless blue sky ahead, a genuine, radiant smile spreading across my face. Anywhere, I whispered, holding his hand tightly. The world is finally mine.